Hi guys, welcome back to YOCF In The Wild. We are currently in the middle of going through fruits of the Spirit, which is found in Galatians. And so we've gone through a few of them and we are going to be talking about goodness this week. And so I think goodness is a funny topic for us to sometimes think about because it's not something that we think of as inherently only having to do with God being at work in our lives, because we can think of so many people, I'm sure you guys can too, in your life that aren't Christians or don't know God, and they are good people or they do good things and they exhibit goodness in lots of ways. And so today we're going to talk about what that really means to have a biblical goodness that comes through in our lives. And so a few ways that we're going to be looking at it and thinking about it today is by asking ourselves a couple of questions. So like, what really is goodness? And so a few definitions that I feel like fit a good understanding of what biblical goodness looks like is having a goodness that represents that we are following and obeying God through our actions and what we do. And another way that we can describe it is as something that's morally good. So us making choices and actions that we're taking that are morally good, and our morals are where most of us in the Christian community find it in the Bible, is that our moral basis of what's right and what's wrong, and how we can see that God is at work in that as well, because some people can have different morals than us, and that's why sometimes we can find people that are not Christians that have good morals as well, because they find it in other places. However, though, there is a big difference in having a biblical goodness versus just being good, and so we're going to continue to discuss that. Another thing to help us kind of understand what biblical goodness looks like is that it's an excellent quality kind of goodness. It's not just something that's good, but it's an overall like sweet goodness that permeates more than just one simple action that we do. And so that's something that we're going to be discussing as to, is goodness something that somebody can have without the fruit of the Spirit, or of the Spirit working in them to make it a fruit that they are portraying throughout their life. And so I would argue that we see it in this passage, the term goodness, meaning that it is something that only can be worked through our lives, and something that we can really harbor in our hearts as something that is only a reflection of the Holy Spirit at work within us. We can only have true goodness if we have God working through us. And so while we might know people, like I said before, that are really good or do really good things, that doesn't mean that they are having this same kind of biblical goodness of God being at work in their heart, affecting their choices and having them make their actions based off of a righteousness. And that's what we're going to see and find in the Bible as well, is that it's through our actions that are righteous that makes it an actual goodness, of the quality of goodness that we are having. And so if we know that God is dwelling within us, he is helping us discern these choices and figure out whether this is a morally good thing. It's kind of like helping guide us like a compass, is the way that the Holy Spirit can work within us when we are, and that's how we can see that he actively is working within us. And so I wanted to ask you guys a question. Why do we need to be showing goodness and not just doing good things? So take a minute, pause, and ask the group that you're doing this with, or maybe ask a friend, or think about it for yourself if you're doing it on your own. So again, why do we need to be showing goodness and not just be doing good things? So we'll take a pause. Okay, hopefully you guys have had some good conversation and some good answers as to why we need to be showing goodness and not just doing good things. But I think a big explanation of that is saying that it's a lifestyle to be having and doing goodness throughout our lives, and not just doing good things occasionally here and there. Anyone can do good things, like we said before, and we kind of figured out earlier that anyone can do good things, but to have a life where you're living, where you're making righteous choices based off of God helping you discern through the Holy Spirit at work in your heart is a lifestyle that you live of the choices that you make that are affecting other people. And sometimes it can be really hard to make those choices. And so when I think of somebody who has exhibited goodness well in the Bible, I think of Esther. And so I want you guys to flip over to Esther and read through it if you guys don't know the story of Esther. But if you do, then continue on. But I'm going to bring up a few points. Esther is somebody that's in the Bible. There's a whole book about her, and she was a Jewish girl who found herself being married to a king, and she found herself in the middle of being torn between her people, who are the Jewish people that were at risk of being killed innocently because somebody did not want them to be around anymore, that was very close with the king, and helped him write a decree to help that happen. And so Esther stood up and had that choice of action and righteousness, and the actions that she showed are good in more than just a way of them being a good choice in that moment, but it's an exhibit of goodness that's an everlasting morally right choice that she made in standing up for what was right. And that can only be done with that courage and encouragement is by God working with her, helping her, and being present in her life. And so this is something that I think we can look to of like, are we making choices like Esther would? Maybe you aren't saving a whole people group, but you might be making small choices in your life that are having a big impact of you standing up for what is right and standing up for the good things and making good choices that are righteous, holy, and are following along with the morals that God has instilled within us in his word that we get to see. And so I have a couple more questions for you guys before we finish up. And I want you guys to be answering these questions with community. So again, if you're doing this with community, stop, pause, think about these. If you're not, maybe journal some things down. But what are some ways that you see the Holy Spirit working in you with goodness in your heart? Do you see that you are making choices that are reflecting goodness, or do you see yourself only doing good things sometimes because it's convenient to you? And that's something that we see in the story of Esther. It was not convenient for her to exhibit this good choice. It was something that was exuding from her in her choices because it was something that was reflecting goodness in the righteous choices that she was making, being influenced by God. Another question is, how can you participate, or how can you practice goodness over just being good? How can you tangibly make those choices and make sure that you are not just making choices because it's easy and you think it's okay, this is just going to be something to help me look good, or I'm going to be good enough, or that this is the right thing to do because like society tells me that this is the right thing to do. But how are you going to reflect goodness in that it's high quality moral choices and actions that you are exhibiting that can only come with God being present with you? And then the last one is to challenge you guys to ask the Holy Spirit to lead you into goodness, and ask him to be a part of helping you discern these choices, because sometimes it can be really hard to figure out if you're doing something just because you feel like you should, or if you're doing something because it actually is influencing your whole life of making morally right choices that are reflecting that God is working within you and that he is desiring goodness for those around you and being a reflection of him as a follower of Christ. Are you doing that right? And if you feel like that might be something that you're struggling with, pray about it. Ask God to work with you and help you get to that place. But I hope that this is something that is challenging to you guys, that this is something that you guys will be able to look at and think about through this week of what does it look like while you're making these good choices. Are they something that is a long-lasting lifestyle choice because God is with you and walking with you, or is it because you are trying to just do what's right just to get by? So I hope that this is something that you guys think about, but we'll see you guys next week. We love you.